To my girls, gays, and days, it's your boy Nate. I read books because reading is sexy, and if you're not reading, you're not sexy. But today, we're talking movies. We're talking about the moving pictures. Alright, let's get into this. So, for what month are we in? Also, is this lighting situ too much? We're at the height of the afternoon here. Okay, so I did 18 movies for September. I think it might be my weakest month. Also because I cheated a bit. Some of these movies were part of like exhibition spaces, like from museums. And yes, y'all, sometimes the movies you see in museums are on Letterboxd. We'll get into it. I picked like a few bad and a few good and some happy middle children in the middle. Okay, let's just do this. Okay, so from worst to best, here we go. At number 10, I watched Cabbageman K from 1980. This is an art house Japanese film about a man who one day wakes up and is made of he's made of cabbage. I think the title explains itself. And then he wanders around town wondering why the cost of cabbage is so expensive, and then it becomes like mockumentary in a way, asking people in the streets of Tokyo why cabbage is so expensive, or the importance of it, and how it's so inherent to Japanese culture and dishes. For what is like about a 50-minute film, feels way too long. In the end, I'm going to spoil it for you because it'll probably be really hard for you to find. I had the pleasure of watching this at a old queen's house in the middle of nowhere, and he had a print of this, and I was just like, what? He had his own like little private theater. I'm not going to get into it. Don't ask. But in the end, the public ends up hating him, and then he runs to the fields to bury himself in the ground where cabbages are from. What's incredible to me is that the human imagination is, first of all, wild, but also that films like this exist. And you have to give credit to sort of the wacko, gonzo, bizarro stuff that's out there and exists and was like funded. Like it took people time, energy, money to make this. That astounds me. All the way in 1980. You wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't had stepped into that old queen's house in the middle of buttfuck nowhere. At number 9, I watched Frenzy by Alfred Hitchcock out of 1972. I think we all know Hitchcock's work, but we're not familiar with Hitchcock's later work. And there's like 2 or 3 other films that I want to watch by him that he did very late in his life. It's a framed murder goose chase about a man who kills women with his neckties. It's what's supposed to be a fun cat and mouse chase, but there's just something so off-putting about it, and it's perhaps Hitchcock's most violent film. It's quite gruesome. It's really brutal, done in kind of like a sleazy kind of way. It's just interesting to see Hitchcock work within this time period. So I'm curious about the other later Hitchcocks out there. I think it'd be okay for spooky season. It's a little too long. At best, it's like a B average. It's Hitchcock. Okay, y'all remember what I was saying about movies and museums? At number 8, I have Cut Piece by Yoko Ono out of 1965. And it's essentially her on stage with a pair of scissors next to her, and random people from the audience that like just showed up for the performance were allowed to go up to the stage, pick up the pair of scissors, and cut whatever they wanted from Yoko Ono's body. You get repeat customers, and with every pick up of the scissors, you tense up, you worry, and though for the most part it's quite silent, it's so disturbing. I think the silence to it all adds to the tension of the film because you're so afraid of what might happen, and everything is stripped off eventually. A man who I think goes up for like his second or third time, like tries to take off more than he needed or wanted. And I think curiosity gets the best of him. But it's a daring piece. It's really scary. And I think it speaks to the natural dangers that just how women exist, and it's really scary. It's really scary. Wonderful piece. I saw this at MMCA and watched it in full. Was quite disturbed by it. Good stuff. Okay, at number 7, I have Miami Blues out of 1990. Okay, we got a Baldwin. I forget which Baldwin it is. Is it Alec? I think it is Alec. It's a young Alec Baldwin, and he's kind of hunky, not gonna lie. Is released from prison and kind of starts this new life in Miami. But by doing so, he like steals a police badge and abuses that badge and steals guns and just acts out all of his fantasies as a fake cop. And yeah, it's a wild, wild, frenetic film. It has that really odd Florida vibe to it. It's rich in its sun-soaked screwball comedy and drama. It's a good dramedy. And you never really know where it's going. It's quite unpredictable, but you're there for the ride. It almost feels like early Tarantino. This is directed by George Armitage, and it's a fun, action-packed movie that never loses steam all the way to the end. I like those kinds of movies. Why not? You know, it's not always so pretentious over here, okay? I like action-packed fun, okay? Transformers was fun. It feels hot, it's sexy, but also full of violence. That's what's really interesting about it. Has like a really nice balance of comedy, drama, and violence, which I always feel like is the frame that Tarantino works in. Though I think he gets way too excited and his ultra-violence, and that overpowers sort of the grace of the rest of his films. Except for, I'm trying to think. I like Django Unchained. And the Nazi film that he did, what was that? Ooh. Inglourious Bastards. But yeah, if you like Tarantino, I think you'd really like this. At number 6, I watched film Socialisme out of 2010 by ya homeboy Jean-Luc Godard. And this was quite a slog to get through, not gonna lie. But I appreciate it a lot. I always appreciate how Godard, part of the Nouvelle Vague and breaking the conventions of cinema, we can thank him for creating essentially the jump cut, sort of chopping up the fluidity of film. And he consistently does that to the very end of his life. This came out in 2010, but at times it still feels a bit revolutionary in that he uses 3 different cameras. And has just like this really unique editing style when he has text involved, really interesting sound design as well. And it's experimental. It's experimental, and it says a lot about the tensions of minorities in France in between 3 different short stories, if you will. It's a compilation film. There's 3 different stories involved here. We have one on a cruise ship, one between neighbors, and a family at a gas station. Yeah, I liked this on like an editing standpoint. So if anyone must know, most of my vlogs are inspired by Godard. I just love how he uses film as medium to create this like really textured piece of visual medium, written medium, photographic medium as well. Always challenging cinema, which here he calls film socialisme. But don't watch this. it's a lot to get through, not gonna lie. At number 5, I have Gothic, and I need to pull up this director's name because I like his work a lot. I watched another film by him called Altered States that I really enjoyed. He just does like dreamscape nightmares and the psychosexual so well. He's so Freudian, and I love it. Everything part of the conscious exists in the reality of his stories. You see the great influence and power that dreams and nightmares have in his work. But with Gothic, what we have is a Victorian home in the middle of nowhere. These young kids sort of go crazy in this house together, and they see hallucinations while telling each other like spooky, scary stories. It's very Gothic, Victorian, scary, but not like too scary. There's like jump scares, but it's all done in this almost like candy colored fairground kind of way. It almost feels like a circus, and there's much delight in the way the demons in the film orient around the pain and pleasure of the characters. Okay, what is this director's name? Ken Russell. Yes, Ken Russell. I think he's based in the UK. But yeah, he does these like really fantastic fantastical films that I really enjoyed. But yeah, if you want something good for spooky season, I think this will do it. It's like not too scary. It's more of a like suspense thriller, psychosexual nightmare. It feels like a big funhouse, which I love. I want to get to more of Ken Russell's stuff, but if y'all get a chance, Altered States is pretty up there. It has this great like nightmare dream sequence of a demon goat. So look out for that. Or is it a ram? I think it's a ram. A demon ram. If I'm correct, blood is involved and it shoots out laser beams from its eyes. Let's see, what's next? Out of 1994, I watched What Happened Was. This is it was surprisingly really moving to me, where you have office girl, works 9 to 6, comes home from work, sets up her home, prepares dinner, to have like this little date with one of her coworkers. They just talk. They just talk about themselves and about each other. But the thing is, and you realize this when you get into it, that they don't really know anything about each other, even with all the information that they provide each other. And it really goes to show, like, do you really ever know a person? Like, how they share stories or what they share, even personal anecdotes, their opinions on the things that you said. You really don't ever get to know truly who the person is, whatever that means. It reaches a state of vulnerability at the end where like gut punches you and surprises you in a way. This is adapted from a stage play, I think written by the director. And I think it's a beautiful adaptation. There's like really interesting choices in terms of creating the tensions and intimacy between the two characters. Like the blocking is really beautiful. Some of the cuts, there's like really interesting cuts where they'll reach out and touch each other's shoulders and it'll cut to a zoom in and then cut back to a zoom out, and just like plays with this tension of intimacy within closeness, but then within exponential distance. It's beautifully written. If you're looking for a good stage adaptation to film, it's beautifully done. Okay, at number 3, we've got Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, 1992. For all my Lynch Twin Peaks fans out there, let it be known, I've only watched season 1 in full. I tried season 2, but it was just like too long. I didn't have the patience for it. That's my background as a Twin Peaks stan. I really want to watch, what is it? What did he put out recently? Oops, was typing, and nothing came out. Oh yes, it's called Twin Peaks: The Return. I really want to watch that because I think it's really interesting that Lynch still tries to defy the medium of TV. So I really want to see this. Okay, see, I'm really curious what people think of this if you haven't seen Twin Peaks. Because in itself, does it have its singularity as a film by itself, outside of the TV show? I think yes. Although I think you might need to read like a tiny Wikipedia paragraph about it before you enter the movie. But essentially, we have this like little tiny town. It's burdened with grief of the death of Laura Palmer, this beautiful high school girl. And basically the whole show is about that and the traumas induced within all the individual traumas of each person and how they relate themselves to the death. And then ultimately, what is collective trauma within community. With the film, though, David Lynch decides to go into flashback and gives us the horrors leading up to Laura Palmer's death. If anyone doesn't know, David Lynch, he works well in sort of the horror dreamscape. And I don't ever know how he gets away with creating such surrealism with his shocking imagery. But if you thought Twin Peaks was like pretty avant-garde and out there, Fire Walk With Me is bad. It is gruesome. It is so scary. All the worst possible things you could imagine that like already happened in the show happen in this film before her death. And it's kind of insane. He gives us the foil of post Laura Palmer and like present Laura Palmer. And it's really scary. In essence, this almost feels like a horror movie. And I think I jumped once or twice in the film. Yeah, you have to give credit where credit is due. When Lynch, I don't know how he does it. It's amazing that he's able to create such intensity in dreams. He just has an incredible imagination. I love Lynch. What I love about this is that there's so much rewatchability to it. There's so much symbolism in it that I think you can pick at it. When you think you've understood Twin Peaks, he surprises you. You know nothing. You know nothing. And it's this continuous web of the unknown that I think is brilliant throughout this film. I'm losing a bit of light here, so I want to hurry. At number 2, I have Portrait of a Young Girl at the End of the 60s in Brussels out of 1994. You know, I was so sick and tired of myself saying, I need to watch a film by this female director whose name I'm gonna butcher, because I think it's 2 or 3 other female directors and I just hate myself for doing that. I know, y'all. I'm awful. What is your name? I think it's Chantal Akerman, though. Is it you, Chantal? It is. I was right. Okay. Yeah, y'all, I'm awful. I always get Chantal Akerman confused with Agnes Varda or Claire Denis, and I feel so bad. Just because they're French and just because they're women. I'm awful. I'm awful in that way. Anyway, wonderful film. It's like, what is it? It's 60 minutes. It's 60 minutes of pure girlhood, of its intensity, of its woes, of its loves. All the feelings are there up to the very end. And it ends with like young female rage, in jealousy, in spite, in sadness, in such intense sorrow that it feels like the end of the world. But it's essentially about this girl, and she meets this guy, and it's a exploration of sexuality and love, and then her girlfriend gets a boy toy thing too, and yeah, it's just, it says all that it needs to say in such a short amount of time. Like an instant, that youth happens in an instant, and I think that's what's so beautiful about it. It also has this like raw, honest quality to it as well. Yeah, it's just beautifully done. If you have 60 minutes, please give this a watch. It's wonderful, and don't be that person who's like, yes, I've heard of Chantal Akerman, but I've not watched anything by her. You can do this one. 60 minutes. Really good. Really good stuff. All right, at number 1, I have Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story. And I forget, it's that problem again. Is it Todd Haynes or Todd Fields? Todd Haynes or Todd Fields? Todd Haynes. And to remind you all, Todd Haynes is the same guy who brought you May, September of last year and Carol. This is a short film that tells the story of Karen Carpenter, of The Carpenters. And I didn't realize how tragic of a life that she led, that she was kind of a martyr in some ways, that she was abused in the industry and was suffering from an eating disorder, was made to sing sort of these like happy jolly songs. Yeah, she had to really fake it in order to make it. It's retold in this short film by way of Barbies, and I that's what is horrific and alarming about it. It borders on camp and unease. It's shot on this like really shitty film grain, and just these Barbies talking that tells a horrific story, and there's like really scary cuts in here too. It hit me really hard by the end. It just like the way he cut the film and the fizz of the film grain as well. It was really haunting, and yet somewhat lyrically beautiful about it. And yeah, it's crazy that like this was at the beginning of Todd Haynes' career, and he put something out like this where he really did want to tell the truth, because there is another Karen Carpenter story, but I think it was like in the hands of the Carpenters Foundation or something, so they cut out all like the mean bits and really had full control of presenting like the beautiful side versus the ugly side, and Todd Haynes gives us all of the ugly, and it's really distressing and sheds light to the truth. It's on YouTube, if you don't mind the shitty film grain. It's haunting, really haunting. Interesting just to watch, like, the early work of this director while he goes out to achieve stuff like May, December and Carol. You see where his interests lie about the woman, the corporal mortality of woman, and all of the interior and exterior anxieties that meet together to destroy the woman, inside and out. Okay, let me know what you watched in September. Were there any bangers? Let me know. I want to see Megalopolis. It's not going to come. I want to see The Substance. I don't think it'll come here for a while. And yeah, I want to watch the new Joker, and I really want to catch that in the theaters. Hopefully I have time and make time to see it, because I love Lady Gaga. That's it. As always, be well, do good work, keep in touch.